Welcome to Mordor, land of brushes and paint. Yes, now you're going to learn.
Hello, welcome to another painting session, and today we have Mossbeard, a huge titan of a tree beard or ent from the Bones 4 Kickstarter from Reaper Miniatures. This guy is huge, but what a fantastic miniature he is. This is going to be fun to paint, and I am going to only be using maybe 4-5 colours to do the whole miniature because it's a very simple paint. And I am going to mount this bad boy on a huge 160mm base, and I'm going to glue him on there. Now what I'm going to do with this miniature is I'm going to give the base a woodland effect. So I've been out with my little Jack Russell, Bonnie, and she's been collecting bits of twigs with me today. So I've got these little twigs from our local woods, and I'm just going to break off a few different pieces here and there, and these are going to be stuck to the base just to give a little bit of, just give an extra bit of wood effect to the miniature. Now, you can collect all these bits from the woods on your walks. You don't have to pay a fortune to all these different shops to get specialized bits of woods when you can just pick them up yourself. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick the miniature to the base, and then I'll come back and show you what I'm going to do with the base with these wood parts, because I want to get the base on first, and then I'll paint the whole miniature because it's all going to be the one coat, and then I'll work up the coats of dry brushing. It's a very simple paint, very effective, and I think you'll like it. The tree is now stuck on with super glue. Again, I using the Loctite liquid super glue, absolutely amazing stuff. Now I've got some PVA glue in here. I've snapped off some twigs that I'm going to use for my base, and in here I've got a 50-50 mix of medium gravel and fine gravel, and this will be perfect for the base. So all we're going to do is I am going to get this bad boy covered in glue on the base, just using an old brush. Don't use your good brushes for this. Once the glue is on, we shall then stick on our little pieces of wood wherever we like, and we shall then cover the base with our gravel, and the wood will blend in and look very cool. So just push the glue right up to the gaps, just up to the tree, to the feet of the tree, the roots of the tree. As Tree Beard would say, hobbits. Yeah, my tree impression wasn't too good, was it? This paint, what we'll be doing is we'll be priming the whole base with a nice dark brown, and that'll be our paint to work from, and we'll just go from lighter highlights from the dark brown. So if you start with your darkest colour, of course using a lighter colour on top will bring out all the different shades and highlights of your tree. There we go. That's our glue on. Let's just put that in there for now. Get rid of that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put these little branches on. So I'm just going to stick one there. One over there. These little ones here and there. One just there. This one here. And another little one there. And maybe just one there. There you go. Simple as that. And now all we do is we sprinkle on our gravel. We take off the excess here with our thumbs. This is a large miniature, goodness me. Now, I am not going to tap off the excess. I'm going to let it dry and then I'll tap off the excess, because I don't want those pieces of wood to fall off straight away. So I am going to let that dry and I will come back and carry on. The base is all dry now, all our bits of wood are nicely stuck on, so it's time to prime the mini. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to use a rattle can primer. I might test it on a little piece and see, because you can never tell with a bones miniature whether or not the rattle can will work, so it's always best to try a tiny little bit first to see if it dries. So I am going to give it a nice brown base coat and I will come back and we'll carry on. The primer is done. I used the Army Painter rattle can primer on this one. I used let me get this in frame for you. I used Leather Brown by Army Painter. Army Painter seems to be a very good rattle can spray primer and works with most of the Bones miniatures. The first Bones miniatures from like the Kickstarters 1, 2 and 3, they were using I don't know if it's a different plastic, but I used to really struggle with these primers. But so far, all the minis I've painted from Bones 4, I've been able to use a primer spray on my miniatures with no problems. But that might be pot luck, so don't take my word for that. Always spray a tiny bit first, see if it dries. If it dries, you know you're good to go. If that's not working, then just use your ordinary acrylic paints as a primer coat. It's always best to have a primer coat on your minis. So the next stage is, this has all been nicely primed. I am going to coat the whole miniature now with Agrax Earthshade, and this is the brown Agrax Earthshade, and it will give the miniature instant shading all over the miniature. So I'm going to cover the whole miniature from top to bottom in Agrax Earthshade, and I'll come back once I have applied the Earthshade. And then we will go on to the next stage, which will be the dry brushing. Right, I'm ready to put the dry brushing on. The whole miniature has been given a nice coat of brown ink wash, as you can see, all over. And now I'm going to start the dry brushing. I'm using 2 paints. I am using Graveyard Bone from MSP, and I'm using Skeleton Bone from Army Painter. Can't see in the light, so I see if I can get there you go. That's the paints there. That's the Army Painter one, and that's the MSP Skeleton Bones. I'll probably mix and match as I go along. Got my little bit of tissue, and here we go. Getting all the highlights in, starting at the highest areas. This is with the darker of the two. This is the Army Painter Skeleton Bone. Going over all the parts of the wood I can see. Tips of the wood, of course, will be stronger, more worn. And we do the same with the wood on the base. Nice and even. Working on the edges, like I say before, more important, like on here. The more places where it'll be worn, the wood. So all the edges. It doesn't take long. They're just quickly going over all the wood. Super duper fast, and it's super easy, and it just brings out tons and tons of detail, which is really exciting. It just makes the miniature come to life. I mean, I am painting all my miniatures to what I call a tabletop standard. Of course, you can spend weeks on a miniature. But I find if you can get your mini just to a tabletop standard, it just makes it special. You don't need to spend weeks on a miniature. You can get a nice job done just with a little bit of practice, and you get all your armies done. I mean, we all know how many miniatures come with the Reaper Bones core sets. I mean, come on, life isn't long enough to paint all our minis. I mean, goodness me, the amount of minis I have that I know I'll never get round to painting is ridiculous. If I wanted to do a show quality paint for each one of those, I would be in trouble. There's no way. There is no way I would get them done. No way. So I have learnt that tabletop standard and being okay with tabletop standard is the way to go for me. Yes, I can do a competition or showcase standard miniature if I wanted to, and I've won awards for doing showcase miniatures, but I want my miniatures painted, and I haven't got time to do every single one to put to a display standard, and this is why I do what I do. I get so many miniatures painted in a week now. It's unbelievable. And the more you paint, the faster you'll get, and you'll learn ways that makes you faster without losing the quality of the paintwork. Okay, so this is okay. I'm happy with that. That's nice. Yes. We'll be going over the moss with the green, and you all know how much I love the green, so that'll be going on soon. Now with this mini, I think it's time to just lighten it up a little bit. So I'm just going to mix in a little bit of the skeleton bone and the graveyard bone, and just highlight a bit more on the tips. Just a quick flick. Don't need much. Just a tiny bit. Just to pot the edges of the mini. Oh yeah. There we go. A little bit more. Mix it in. Yes. There we are. Here we have a couple of toadstools. We'll paint them in later. All the green, that's just going to be dry brushed over. And what we do is I will add the green dry brush in a minute. Now we'll do this together. And then I'm going to add some, and then we go over it again with a lighter ink wash, and that will help to blend all the chalky effect from the dry brushing, and it will make the whole miniature complete, and of course it'll give another nice shade to your mini. So I'm just going to put some of this lighter bone onto the floor, just in slight patches. There we go. Don't need a lot, just a touch, because it's all going to be highlighted with green in a second, and the green will give you that lovely moss effect, and will make it look more like it's a forest scene. There we are. Quite happy with that. Very simple and super fast, like I said it would be. And that's just your first little bit of dry brushing. Very nice. I'm happy with that already. So now we're ready to go to the next stage, and now I'm using Mossy Green by MSP and Cat's Eye Green by MSP. And first of all, we're going to use the Mossy Green, and this is the darker green. This will be for the back of the moss effects, and then we'll highlight with the lighter Cat's Eye Green, and again we'll be dry brushing this all on. There you go. Just going over the actual miniature sculpture of the moss, but we're still going to go over the miniature with the green as well, because the bark will be covered in a mossy effect. It will have a green effect to the actual bark anyway, so this is why we're going to mix up the greens and cover the whole mini in the greens where we think it belongs. So this is what we're going to do. We're just going over the green where the moss is on the sculpture, and then we're going to work our way around the rest of the tree. When you're using big models, when you're painting a big miniature like this, I'm using this little spinner table. It really does help with your work. That's most of the moss effects done. Now what we're going to do is we are actually going to move on from the moss effects and add it to the base and to the rest of the miniature, and that is just a quick flick over the wood on the base, just to add a little bit of green, as the floor will be covered in leaves and green, so we're going all over. No particular place, you're just getting a little bit of green just to show there's something on the ground growing. It's making it more real. Bit of when you go for your walks with your dog, you know, you go through the woods and you see all these things growing, you always get this lovely green. It's a very simple thing to do, but it looks fantastic once it's on. It ages the miniature instantly. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I am going to go into the lighter green and just highlight the moss areas. Not cleaning the brush. I got a tiny bit, I want to keep a tiny bit of the dark, so goes down. Oh, that's nice. You want to keep the dark underneath, so we're just adding the highlight to the tips of the moss. There you go. That's what we're after. I can't see that too well in the light of my desktop lamp, but it's a very nice green. There we go. We're just dabbing that one on actually. That's it, a bit stronger. There you go. This is what's beautiful about painting, is you can add as you go. If you make a mistake, you just keep on going. Keep on going. Don't worry about it, just enjoy what you're doing. There we go. See, I've turned this dry brush into a dabbing brush. So I'm using it to sort of push the paint on. Stippling effect almost. So, just want to get a good variation of green on the mould. There we go. Make our way to the bottom. Can go over a tiny, just tap a little bit, tap some over the wood there. Oh yeah, that's it. I think you need to be super glued a little bit. This one, this little bad boy here, this little twig is not quite set yet. Okay, that's nice. There we are. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let this completely dry, and I will come back and show you what I'm going to do next. But as you can see, it's looking the biz. There you go. Look at that. Now when my dry brushing has dried, I am going to go over the whole miniature with a soft tone ink wash by Army Painter. This will help to blend in the dry brushing. It will take away the chalkiness of the dry brushing, and it will just give more definition and shading to the miniature. Once this is done, I'll come back once it's dry. All we need to do then is we'll be adding some leaves to the base and a couple of maybe bits of moss to the miniature, and I'm going to call that done. Yeah, here we have the finished Mossbeard. I've added a bit of flocking to the tops of the tree, and I have added some leaves. The leaves are sprinkles from Green Stuff World, these ones here. I'll leave a link at the bottom of the video where you can buy these awesome little leaves. I've also added a bit more of the flocking to the bottom too. And there we are. Very simple paint, but looks fantastic. I added the little mushroom tops there. Very happy how this turned out. I hope you enjoyed this little video. And there we are, ready for photographs. So, until next time.
Goodbye, my fellow ones. Sleep well. Dream of evil paintbrushes.